very good evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Oyi Okbala. Let's begin. In the quiet, grieving heart of the Nguame community in Victoria, tragedy struck with a sudden, merciless hand. On Sunday, June 29, a fatal road accident involving a car and a motorbike claimed the lives of three individuals. Amongst them, two sisters whose bond in life has now become a symbol of shared loss in death. As the news ripples through the streets and homes, the pain is palpable, raw, immediate, and devastating. Families are left grappling with the kind of grief that leaves no words, only tears. But this is not an isolated sorrow. In the wider reaches of the southern Cameroons, particularly in towns like Bamenda, a grim pattern continues to unfold. The long and grinding war in Ambazonia has not only upended daily life but has redefined how communities say goodbye. Funeral homes report an unprecedented surge in requests, more standby coffins, more ambulance vans, more urgent calls for words, and mourning garments. Death has become an unwelcome but constant companion, and with each loss, the war's toll on ordinary people deepens. This surge in funeral demand is not just a statistics, it's a mirror held up to the human cost of a prolonged conflict. Behind every coffin prepared, there is a name, a family, a shattered future. Behind every hearse, a procession of heartbreak. And yet, amidst the sorrow, communities continue to hold fast to dignity, tradition, and the sacred act of remembrance. All these and more we have on tonight's Undaunted. But first, let's bring the headlines. For tonight, let's start with Denizens in Bamenda, having remained true to the traditional Monday ghost town. As of today, June 30th is not even different. Tonight, disgraced collaborators chief buried in shame by colonial forces in Boyer. We'll take a look at the road accident that has claimed three lives in Victoria. Also tonight, to give you the report of the war in Ambazonia and how it has boosted funeral service provider industry in Ambazonia, particularly in Bamenda. All the Africans seen at least 7 dead, dozens injured in Togo's anti-government protest. And of course, on the foreign scene, tensions are rising between US and Iran as diplomatic path faces obstacles. Now let's get the news in full briefings. In a display of solidarity and adherence to tradition, the city of Bamenda has once again observed the Monday Ghost Town, a day of the shutdown and reflection. Today, Monday, June 30th, was no exception. As in customary, the city streets are early quiet, with commercial activities grinding to a halt. Transportation has been severely impacted, with many vehicles off the roads. The usually bustling streets and dry and devoid of the usual hustle and bustle. The Monday Ghost Town has become an integral part of the city's culture, a testament to the resilience and determination of its residents. Despite the challenges, the people of Bamenda have remained true to this tradition, making it a day to pause and reflect. However, the financial implications of this shutdown are significant, with La Republic du Cameroon bearing a substantial brunt. the loss of revenue from market activities, tolls, and other commercial transactions on Monday takes a huge toll on La Republic de Cameroon coffers, impacting the city's ability to fund essential services and infrastructure projects. The city's shutdown is a deliberate act of defiance and solidarity, showcasing the community's commitment to their values and principles. As the day has unfolded, the people of Bamenda are continuing to stand united, observing this day with the usual solemnity and discipline. The Monday Ghost Town serves as a reminder of the city's unwavering spirit and its people's ability to come together in the face of adversity as the day comes to a close. The residents of Bamenda will continue to have once again demonstrated their dedication to this tradition, a tradition that has become an integral part of their Monday identity. Before we get to our in-house analyst, Barrister Mbeseha, let's take this report that says that chief has been disgraced. So this move underscores the betrayal of the people and the desecration of essential values. A former local chief turned collaborator with the occupying La Republique du Cameroon regime was quietly buried by colonial soldiers, abandoned by his own subjects and community. The individuals, once installed as chief of Elimbe village at Mai 18 Boyer, was known among locals not for leadership, but for his notorious alliance with the genocidal forces of La Republique de Cameroon, bearing the rank of sub-lieutenant. He reportedly led severe brutal campaigns across Fako and Muyuka, where many Ambazonians were subjected to unspeakable atrocities, including killings, rapes, and legal arrests. His demise, allegedly caused by a local explosive device referred to in Ambazonian slangs as a pumpkin, was hailed by some locals as poetic justice. The burial, conducted without the traditional presence of his people or any cultural rites, was carried out by foreign soldiers under the occupation forces, which is further emphasizing the rejection of his legacy by the community he once betrayed. And then insult to injury, land which he controversially tried to sell at Mai 18 with backing from the colonial government has now been frozen following an injunction from Yaoundé. Locals have maintained that the land rightly belongs to the people of Muyuka local government area, not the Elimbe village, exposing the layers of deceit involved in his dealings with the colonial administration. Meanwhile, activists across the Amazonian territories have reiterated that this incident reinforces the importance of vigilance, loyalty to the courts, and the ongoing fight to reclaim Ambazonian sovereignty. This action serves as a warning to all collaborators who sell their conscience for crumbs. Barrister Mbeseha, welcome to tonight's Undaunted.
Thank you for having me once more.
You're welcome. All right, so let's go down to the story of this chief that died, and he wasn't buried properly, no cultural rights. According to reports, his people were not even around, just because of how they feel betrayed by his actions. Do you think that it's just about how he's been betrayed by the actions, or is the fact that probably the insecurities would have probably scared people away from participating in the funeral ceremony?
It is almost everything because in strict terms, Ambazonia, like most African communities, are made of headed by traditional leaders or chiefs. And the African concept cannot prosper in Ambazonia. Peace don't die. Just go money. So this man, strictly speaking, was not a chief. He could have called himself a chief by name, but was not truly a chief. In other words, he was not a product of the community from which he came. If he was a real product of the community from which he came, he would be chief over them. If he was chief there, he would better according to the traditional rights of those people. I'm sure perfectly sure 100% that the traditional rights of those people that you claim to be leader over did not include military parades, did not include gendarmes and people wearing helmets to bury chiefs. And so he was not a chief. He was a chief crowned, perhaps, by the administration to serve their purpose, a collaborator. What is the difference between this man and Moja, the self-made chief of Yaoundé, who was created to serve their purpose, tortured civilians, killed people, and when the time came, was taken into custody, and the so-called palace was burnt to ashes. And what has happened? They have installed another one there in the name of chief. And so this gentleman, as you rightly said, was a collaborator. The style that is giving his departure, his burial, speaks for it. There's no chief in Ambazonia, no one that I know, a true chief, who is buried in covered by government flag, the Cameroon flag. Never. You can come and hold the flag there during your funeral to portray you as assistant to the administration. But they don't tie your coffin, if I told you your coffin, with their uniform, with their flag. It never happens in Amazonia. Because the flag, that piece of cloth you find lying on top of his coffin, is something that the white man brought. A symbol that would try to show that we're a country under that. It is not a symbol to show that all villages, all clans became one under that flag. No. They live as independent clans, independent villages, independent fiefdoms, perform their rights in their way without being disturbed from anywhere. And so this gentleman was not a chief. If he had been a chief again from our own area, he would not even go into a coffin because chiefs don't die anyway. You're going to transition somewhere, and then they are giving a rebirth. Now, having been buried in a coffin, having been buried abroad, you would expect to have his successor. If there must be a successor, is he going to be brought by Yaoundé and installed there? Certainly not. You see, from all things that you see there, a lot is spoken about it. You don't see a single civilian there. Was that chief so unpopular that not even one of his would come to give me a final goodbye? Certainly not. So I would assume that the people of that community that is supposed to have been the head understand what is going on. They understand that this guy was a sellout. He had betrayed their own tradition. He had betrayed their own people. And so when he died, it was good riddance. Unlike General Efan, they abandoned his corpse to the military to do what they wanted to do. And they did. They put him in a wooden coffin, tied him in foreign dresses, and dumped him in a hole in a foreign land. And so this man was a curse. It's a symbol. Many of our other chiefs are there who have fled from their own homes, from their own villages, from their own clans, and sought shelter abroad. But dying abroad, that is out of your own community, does not make you a member of the new community. This is the universal law. Because, for example, Americans who die in the war front in Germany, they bring back their homes here. French people who died in their foreign wars, in Vietnam, they try to bring them back to France when they can find even their bones. And so it's the same culture we have. If the chief of Bafoot, or anybody from Bafoot, or Bambalam, or anywhere, died in Kumba, died in Bamenda town, died somewhere out of his own place, you find the whole community will mobilize to take you back home. Because that's the tradition. Recognized worldwide. You'll be taken back home. The fact that this guy has not been taken back home shows that he's been abandoned, but because he had abandoned the people. He had failed. He was no longer a chief. In the strict sense, he could have carried the title chief because he would drink beer, because the super would give him money. They would even dress him up the way he wanted. They would give him a suit if he wanted one. But chieftaincy is more than that. And so what has happened to this man should be a reminder to our early leaders, those who pose as our leaders, chiefs, farms, community leaders by tradition, should learn never to fall into this trap. And I'll say congratulations to that community from where this guy comes, who abandoned him to the hands of the invaders, or the people who had adopted him as their own new chief, buried him in their own way, and I hope you will never see the guts of his village anymore. Over to you.
Oh, well, still in a very sad report again. Now, the Colonial Law Republic de Cameroon military has, assassinated a prominent commander of the Ambazonian State Army during a drone raid on the village of Benahundo in Menchum County. The operation, according to reports, carried out on the 25th of June by troops of the BIS, that's the Rapid Intervention Battalion, reflects the ongoing military aggression by the colonial regime against Ambazonians' quest for self-determination. Benahundu, like many parts of the southern Cameroons, has long witnessed repeated incursions by La Republic to Cameroon forces aimed at crushing resistance and dismantling the foundations of Ambazonian statehood. The fallen commander, known by their name Van Dam, had played a critical role in defending Ambazonian territory and coordinating strategic operations against occupying forces. Report says the colonial military stormed what they suspected to be a base, engaging in a surprise attack that led to Van Dam's martyrdom. In this typical show of force, the attackers confiscated AK-47 rifles, loaded magazines, several rounds of ammunition, a reminder that their intent to suppress any form of organized resistance. The war on Ambazonia continues to take a heavy toll on civilians. What began in 2016 as peaceful protests against this systematic marginalization of Ambazonians quickly turned into a full-blown armed conflict after the colonial regime responded with brutality. In defiance, the Ambazonian government declared independence, leading to the formation of the Ambazonian State Army. The struggle for liberation continues amid daily threats, raids, and human rights violations committed by La Republic Cameroon forces. This is very sad, and as Ambazonia mourns the loss of Commander Van Dam, his sacrifice serves as yet another testament to the price being paid in the fight for sovereignty and dignity. The people remain resilient, determined to carry the struggle forward until freedom is fully achieved. Barrister Mbeseha, this is a very sad one, losing a commander. I know you're not a military personnel, but I know that you're very grounded with information that has to do with, the military part of the Ambazonian State Army. For a long while, it would seem that Ambazonians and the military side, the ASA, they've been in total control. They've been armed graciously to be able to handle any and every kind of attack. But this came to us over the weekend as a rude shock. But how would you react to this surprising attack?
Well, I think the death of that general, that fighter, is only a reminder to us that the war is on. In war, people will lose their lives. We'll mourn at his loss. We've mourned before. He's just one of the many who have died. General Chacha, who is Field Marshal, who is Osobo, and all those other people who have died before me. It all reminds us that we shall not let their death go in vain. They died fighting, and that is why they took up arms to fight. We will not forget their passing until we achieve the goal they fought for. His death 5 days ago, I'm sure, we know quite a number of days ago. Akamara is death, again, back to the ghost towns in Bamenda. It's a reminder to our opponent that the killing of one general, of 2 generals, of 10 generals, whatever number you want to kill, is not going to end the war. The ghost towns Say in Bamenda, just as an example, Bamenda, which is heavily militarized. In Bamenda, you can find helicopters, you can find tanks, you can find everything. But the ghost towns persist. To remind them that this war has not been gone halfway. To remind them that the cause for which we are fighting is a religious cause, is an ideology which cannot be defeated by arms. To remind them that what happened in Bamenda today, what happened in Kumba, Manfi, wherever the ghost towns were, which was called it Country Sunday. Country Sunday is beyond reproach by arms. Nobody ever forces somebody to go to church with arms. Never. And so it reminds Yaoundé that you're really on for a long walk. Kill many more if you can. That will not end the struggle until the ideology behind which the struggle is going on is addressed. The Ambazonian cause for freedom is an ideology for which people are prepared to lay their lives, and they have laid down their lives for it. Those of us who are still surviving, who have not yet fallen, maybe we're just waiting for time, but all we can do is to pray for him and others who went before him. All we can do is to promise him and those who died like him, fighting with arms or fighting with words or fighting with money, like Ate, the Masara, that they didn't die in vain. Their deaths will not go unavenged. Avenging here does not mean that we're going to kill everybody there. Their deaths will not be abandoned until we get to what we wanted to get. And again, for Yaoundé to know that the ideology behind the struggle is what you cannot fight with arms. The ideology behind the struggle is what no tanks can bring it down. No helicopters can bring it down. No missiles will bring it down. And as usual, I was ended by saying, reminding the government of Yaoundé and their allies that the ideology we stand for will never be defeated even if Yaoundé gets the assistance of France and beyond. If they get the assistance of all the allies of France, Mr. Wilbur said, you will not defeat Ambazonia. And so, may he rest in peace. We shall not forget him. We hope he meets his brothers and sisters who went before him. But again, the cause for which he fell is a cause for which we will all fall, or we will all do it today. And we don't want to postpone it till tomorrow. We will succeed, no matter the difficulty. He died, no doubt about that. But why was he killed? Because they have also killed all the enemies. The enemies are not going scot-free. They are suffering the pains. That's why they go into the rampage. They can go into the forest anywhere and throw arms anywhere, thinking that they will shoot every Ambazonia, every supporter of the cause, death. Yeah, you can shoot some of them and kill them, but you cannot shoot their spirit. You cannot shoot the ideology behind it. So, brother, rest in peace. Wherever media, your forefathers, everyone before you, shake hands and have a good drink if there's drinking over there. Over to you.
All right, Barrister Mbeseha. Still on a very sad note, the Ngwame community in Victoria is grappling with grief today following a tragic road accident that resulted in the death of 3 individuals, including 2 sisters. The incident, which occurred earlier yesterday, Sunday, June 29th, involved a car and a motorbike. Investigations are said to be going on in the Atlantic zone after a fatal accident that claimed 3 lives in Ngwame near Victoria yesterday. Among the deceased have been identified 2 sisters, Sandra and Free Mercy, who gave up the ghost at the scene of the unfortunate event. The siblings originally from the Mbengui in the Midland zone were passengers on a motorbike involved in the collision, I beg your pardon. The rider of the motorbike, reportedly a 20-year-old man, also died from his injuries sustained in the incident, shortly after being transported to a nearby hospital. Reports indicate the motorbike was struck by a car. Preliminary information suggests the driver of the car, identified as Wime Jr., is the son of a prominent Victoria businessman and football entrepreneur, Valentine Coin, who presides over Victoria United FC. Success and sources suggest the driver may have been under the influence of alcohol at the time of the accident, having reportedly been at a nightclub in the town prior to the incident. Authorities have yet to release official details regarding the accident or any ongoing investigations. Further updates will be provided as more information becomes available from official channels, and be sure that Undaunted here will definitely bring you up to speed with all information. Worse than basic. Aside the fact that yes, alcohol is being put into the scene as the reason why there is an accident, we already know that the basic and the root cause is the poor road infrastructure and the poor road networks that we already have been crying about.
Well, I think it's not just what people put out there. There's a lot in an accident. If you see the pictures that you put out there, the picture shows that the car is only at the corner there with the broken bonnet. What does it suggest? It suggests it was a head-on collision, coming face to face with the vehicle. Well, how will the vehicle come face to face with the, look at the front of a car? That's a head-on collision. They are coming from opposite directions. Why would that even happen? It will happen because they are very bad roads, if at all there's any road. The roads are bad, first, they are narrow. And so, in looking for space, they hit each other. Should this even have ever been the case in Ambazonia? Those are two young children who have lost their lives in the prime. Should this ever have been the problem in Ambazonia? We don't think it should ever be, especially Victoria. Why? Because Victoria is host to Sonora. Sonora is supposed to refine some oil, and where do they put the waste? They throw it into the sea. The waste is called bitumen. They can use it to make tar, to fix good roads. It's not me saying Buya in the early 90s came to Buya. I was in Buya then. And he himself promised to do that. If there was tar just being pulled out of the waste of Sonora, I think the first place to benefit from would be Victoria. Because it's basically they don't even need to go buy it. We're giving the thing for nothing. But they will not do it. There's no road. Children are dying of preventable accidents. In Ambazonia, transportation by motorbikes shall be the exception, not the mode of transportation. But because motorbikes were built to transport one person only, the best two, you and your wife, or you and your husband, just two of you. They were not meant to be for public transportation, for commercial uses. No, motorbikes are meant for private use. That's their sole purpose. The manufacturers do not create them. They're not burst in to become taxis. And so we are seeing this result of all this so-called unity, so-called Cameroon, so-called United Republic of Cameroon, where Ambazonia is supposed to claim is part of it. Why? Why we must ask this question? What all those things, even if you go to Victoria, you go down, you have PW headquarters, 2-3 story building there. They have the equipment, they have the intelligence, they have everything that they needed in Victoria as a seaport to maintain the roads of Ambazonia, talk less of the ones of Victoria itself. All those equipment were there, they're all gone. They stole them away. They destroyed whatever institutions were there to fix the roads. And what do we have? What accidents are unaccounted for. Accidents, people lose their lives for reasons that could have been prevented. It had been just a small express road in Victoria. There will not be any head-on collision. That car had a head-on collision with the motorbike. Why? Why in Victoria? What do you make a 1 meter road for vehicles to ply both ways on it? Victoria is not a huge town. It's so level. That's at the beach. They don't have the money just to put soil on the ground and make a double road. It's not cutting a hill, and will not do it. Vehicles have head-on collisions. Our children die, our mothers die, our parents die, and we die there ourselves. For what? For having ventured to join these people. It's unfortunate. It reminds us why we fight. We used to call Victoria, we thought it was like the Middle East, we call it OPEC City. OPEC City means petroleum exporting country. But has anything ever happened in Victoria to reflect the fact that they are an oil producing city? They are an oil city where oil is being refined. Nothing. Rather, the money that has come out of it has been pumped to Douala. People have been installed to manage it, have been kept there by their masters. They have used the money, stolen the money by themselves, imposed their wives as financial secretaries and accountants, opened bank accounts abroad, and left nothing for Victoria, the producer of the oil and the gas. They left nothing for the people of Ndian, who are the people from where the product comes from. And one asked a question sometimes not long ago. The director of so-called the oil company said the accounts of Sonora, of oil, money coming from Sonora, the accounts are only best known to the president and he, the manager of the product. They are his property. They are their property. And we need to remind them that whatever about accidents in Victoria because of bad roads, whereas the very money that comes from Victoria is used to hire private planes, private jets for the president's daughters and family. They will not even travel on the road, they fly. Not to Victoria, they fly to European capitals. They fly to the Middle East. And our people in Victoria, our Ambazonians, are made to believe that this is where we belong. We have never belonged here. We don't belong here. And we hope we shall never belong here. Because enough is enough. Over to you.
All right, Barrister, thank you so much. Really, enough is enough. But how much is enough when the ongoing war in Ambazonia has led to a surge in demand for funeral services? Oof. If from the beginning of this news bulletin tonight, we can count how many from the first report: loss of life, loss of life, loss of life, loss of lives, with a notable increase in standby coffins, reefs, and ambulance vans. This growth in the industry is this deep reminder of the human cost of the war. Funeral service providers in Bamenda has so far reported a significant rise in requests for their services, often on short notice. So, that particular industry, the growth is driven by the need for dignified burials and mourning services for those affected by the conflict, which is on a regular. The increase in demand for funeral services raises questions about the impact of the war in Ambazonia on civilians and the need for a peaceful resolution. The situation shows the importance of addressing the root causes of the crisis and working towards a sustainable solution. At the Meter Quarter neighborhood, high-profile vehicles played their funeral van service. Despite the high cost of their hiring such a van, all families are obliged to hire this service, not to soil their so-called family names. Reeds and the rest of them are also on the increase. Barrister Mbeseha. So it seems while we are here saying, let's have a peaceful resolution, let's have an agreement. People are dying because, the colonial government seems not to care. We just our last report is just about two sisters dying. It means there's going to be a barrier. It means that they'll hire burial cars. They will definitely get coffins. So it seems like while people are losing their lives, while families are crying, while there are tears, there is an industry that is benefiting, that has been benefiting for the past 8 years and counting since this war began. Highly painful, but shouldn't this send a message to the colonial forces to at least find a way to have this dialogue?
Well, to find a way to end this conflict or not. I think we've had the opportunity to address this issue. This is part of what they call the war economy. People who benefit from war. People make money out of war. In ordinary circumstances, there are very few funeral homes available in a particular town because it's not a lucrative business. It's not a business that everybody wants to do. Because the more you begin to make money, there's something wrong. Or there's an epidemic taking people away, or something is killing people unusually. And so they will do all that. But the good thing about it is, those funerals, those people putting their cars there, just from the last segment, even the collaborators, like the chief who died, their paymaster will go and look for a wooden coffin, pay some money, buy it, to go and bury him there. And so this should never have been the case. Look at that area you're showing us. Those vehicles are parked there ready to carry dead people to provide funeral services. But look at the nature of the street where they are parked. Look at the environment itself. If people don't die in war, they will die out of debt. They will die in accidents, just as we've talked about in the last segment. And so we have gotten to the end of this road. We did not live to bury our own people. Sure, they will die, but that's not the goal of life. We said earlier that people want to be buried home. But how many people, for example, were driving corpses in Bamenda to do or to any place a weekend? Few. Now that death has become the order of the day. Death has become the normal, not the exception. People must benefit from it. The funeral makers, those wooden pieces of plank, that probably would have cost very little or nothing, and that's sold for millions, hundreds of thousands of francs. Why? Because we still have humanity in us. That even though dead, our dead should be given some respect when they are buried. But again, the solution does not lie in closing down funeral homes. You cannot close them. The solution lies in ending situations that bring them business. The situation that gives them business is the war. They will die either in the war front, they will die as internally displaced, or they even die in their own homes of poverty imposed on them by the war. And so there are so many facets to the thing that we do not want it to be part of our community. It should never have been part of our community. But now that it is there, we must end it. How do we end it? The war must end. Because as everybody agrees, no war ends by itself. The war ends when the belligerents sit on the table to address the root causes of the war. This war will end when Yawande will come and meet us. We are sitting on the table waiting for them day and night, every minute. The day they learn to swallow their egos and come to sit down to address the difficult issues, what are you fighting for? The war will end. They too will stop buying coffins to transport their fallen brothers and sisters who fall on the war front, just as our own blood too might end, if not completely reduced. And so war brings death. Death must be buried. If you go behind the screen, you find that a good number of those people who own those funeral homes are connected to the government. It's not enough to buy a piece of plank. You buy vehicles, those things cost money. To run the funeral home, you need a capital, a good capital. And some of those people are suspect are part of the junta in Yaoundé who are making money out of war. What we call all the time the war economy. It has to stop, but will only stop when the war ends. And the war will only end when the people come to the table, what are the root causes of the problem, and find acceptable solutions to both sides. Over to you.
All right, Barrister Mbase here. At this juncture, I am overwhelmed and filled with so much emotions. The report that made up tonight's bulletin has all been draining, emotionally draining. And I think that it could be the same thing for you. And I think that we could just, leave the report from the home front and continue tomorrow. So I would allow you to go, get some fresh air and, refresh your beats. I mean, from the first report, we've been talking about death, death, death up until now. And so I'll allow you to go take some fresh air. I will need you tomorrow the same time. Thank you so much for being part of Undaunted tonight.
Thank you for having me once more.
All right after the break, we'll go over to Togo, where the anti government protest has seen 7 people dead. Well, in Lome, Togo, at least 7 people have been killed and dozens more injured in a wave of anti government protests that erupted in the Togolese capital, Lome. Over the weekend, according to preliminary reports from local civic groups and human rights observers, the protest marks one of the most intense episodes of unrest in recent years in the West African nation. The demonstrations were triggered by controversial constitutional reforms passed earlier this year by Togo's parliament, which critics say are designed to further entrench President Faure's Ganasibe's power. Ganasibe has ruled Togo since 2005, succeeding his father, Ganasibe Eyidama, who held office for 38 years. The recent changes passed without a public referendum includes a shift from a presidential to a parliamentary system that opponents argue could allow Ganisibe to remain in power indirectly beyond current term limits. Eyewitnesses and civil organizations have accused security forces of excessive violence in response to their largely peaceful protests. In multiple neighborhoods across Lome, including the Bay, Ango, and Tokoin, police reportedly fired tear gas canisters into crowds and used batons to disperse demonstrators. Video circulating on social media appears to show uniformed officers beating individuals already on the ground and chasing protesters through narrow streets. These actions amount to state-sponsored brutality, said Kosi Abeyo Mayor, spokesperson for the civil society group Togo Debo. People are demanding their constitutional rights, not violence. On the other hand, hospitals in Lome have reportedly treated dozens of people for injuries ranging from broken limbs to respiratory issues caused by tear gas exposure. The total number of casualties is expected to rise as more information becomes available. The arrest has sparked concern among international observers, human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. They have called for an immediate investigation into the alleged abuses by security forces. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, issued a statement urging both the government and opposition leaders to engage in dialogue and refrain from violence. President Ganisibe has yet to make a public statement regarding the protest or the reported deaths. Meanwhile, opposition leaders have called for continued demonstrations, demanding the repeal of the constitutional changes and the resignation of key government officials. Togo has faced recurring political tension since the early 2000s, often centered on the ruling family's grip on power. The recent constitutional amendments are seen by many as a step backward for democratic governance in the country. Critics fear the reforms may set a precedent for other nations in the region, where leaders have sometimes used legal maneuvers to term limit. As the situation remains tense in Lomé, civil groups have warned of a potential escalation unless international pressure mounts and the government moves towards genuine political reform. And right after the break, we would get over to the US and Iran as tensions are rising between them and would try to see if diplomatic parts are being respected. Iran has issued a clear condition for the resumption of diplomatic negotiations with the United States. Washington must categorically rule out any further military strikes on Iranian territory. This demand was voiced by Majid Tikat Ravanchi, Iran's deputy foreign minister, in an interview with the BBC, where he underscored the high stakes environment surrounding current US Iran relations. The US and Iran had previously been engaged in direct negotiation concerning Iran's nuclear program. These talks, often mediated by European powers and other international stakeholders, were aimed at reviving or reworking elements of the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action (JOCPA), which former President Trump abandoned. However, recent escalation have thrown these diplomatic efforts into doubt. Earlier this month, Israel launched a series of strikes targeting Iranian nuclear and military strikes. Although Israel has not officially claimed responsibility for all the incidents, it is widely believed to be behind the attacks, given its long-standing opposition to Iran's nuclear ambition. In retaliation, Iran launched missiles at Israeli positions and infrastructure, marking a sharp increase in hostilities and raising alarms across the region. On the 21st of June, the conflict took a dramatic turn when the United States bombed 3 Iranian nuclear sites, reportedly in coordination with its allies, and citing concerns about regional security and Iran's missile capabilities. This direct US military involvement marks a significant departure from Washington's previously more restrained posture, reigniting fears of a broader conflict. In response, Deputy Foreign Minister Takit Ravanchi said that Iran had been informed via intermediaries that the Trump administration was interested in returning to the negotiation table. However, he noted that the US has failed to address a critical issue, whether it would cease military action during any potential diplomatic engagement. This is a very important question, Takat Ravanchi told the BBC. You cannot have meaningful negotiation while bombs are dropping on the soils. Iran's firm stance shows the precarious nature of diplomacy in the current environment. While both sides have expressed at different points a willingness to talk, mutual distrust and the threats of further military action remains major obstacles. If the US is serious about restarting negotiation, it may have to offer a credible assurance or even a formal moratorium on military strikes during the negotiation process. Such a gesture could serve as a confidence, a building measure, paving the way for renewed dialogue. But however, diplomatic political considerations in both countries could complicate any such concessions. And it seems like the whole world is going through one thing or the other. We pray for better days. And with that, we draw an end to tonight's Undaunted. But before we go, let's take a look at the major stories. Right tonight on Undaunted, we told you that Denizens and Bamenda have remained true to their Monday ghost town. Also tonight, we took a look at the disgraced collaborator chief buried in shame by colonial forces in Boyer. Road accident claims 3 lives in Victoria. And tonight on Undaunted, we told you that the war in Ambazonia has boosted funeral service provider industry in Ambazonia, particularly in Bamenda. On the African scene, we went to Togo, where at least 7 people have been confirmed dead, while dozens injured in what has been known to be the anti-government protest. While on the foreign scene, we took a look at the tensions rising between US and Iran. That's it for tonight's Undaunted. Bringing to the news untold stories. On behalf of Barrister Team Mbeseha and the team of technicians behind tonight's production, it's good night and have a wonderful evening. We'll leave you with ABC Amba TV images.